Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second episode of Let's Talk Automotive. I'm just again setting up my computer here so that I can see all of your comments, etc., etc. So just bear with me, please. I'm almost there. Alrighty. So guys, please do not. This is exactly why we do what we do. Please interact with us tonight. Post your comments. We'll be able to see them on the screen here, and my guest and myself will be able to talk about them and hopefully answer all your questions. So let's get into the show. Tonight we've got Peter Viljoen. Peter has had many senior positions within the automotive industry. The National Sales Manager of Audi South Africa, also the Product Manager for Mercedes South Africa. And what makes it nice about Peter is also been on the retail side with many roles within the dealerships, including dealer principal. And he's now the Managing Director of SydSen Group. Peter, welcome to the show.
To be in the company of legends.
Yeah. I'm in your company. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate it, man. Peter, welcome to Let's Talk Automotive, the second episode. I'm very excited about the show. This is one that you and I have spoken about since we've met the first day. Pete, tell us a little bit about SydSen Group and what you guys do at the moment.
Okay, so Fani, SydSen is a automotive organizational development business. So there's quite a few topics that fall under that, but I think the three main legs of our business is that we do training for the automotive sector. The second thing that we do is we have a recruitment business. And the third thing that we do is we have a sales action center, which is a fancy word for a call center, but we deal with a lot of internet leads on behalf of some of the OEMs and groups. And then the last thing that we do is we do a lot of consulting to the dealerships in terms of assisting them with their business.
Okay, awesome, man. So basically, automotive one-stop shop, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's where we all grew up. Everybody that is part of the business has an automotive background, which we're very proud of. So it's an industry that we love and we're very passionate about. And I suppose that's why we do the kind of things that we're doing, such as with you now.
Hello, Barcy Steyn. Barcy's joined us. Peter, you actually also know Barcy. He actually sold a car to you just recently.
Yeah, you don't want to say no to Barcy. He's about 7 foot.
No.
So it was an easy sell for him.
Keith Witt has also joined us. Gideon Duplessis online. Lloyd Plant, Willie Uester. Thank you guys for joining in. Peter, if you're ready, let's join the conversation with the guys online. Guys, if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments. We'll get to them as we go along. What I'd like to do, Peter, is we said we're going to talk about the online sales process or the online selling of vehicles. We're going to talk about internet sales departments, and we're going to talk about call centers tonight. So, Pete, if you don't mind, let's start and jump into your first slide that we've prepared for you guys. Please take us through the customer's journey online as we have it with the latest stats that we have currently.
Okay, so Fani, obviously there is a difference between a customer that's purchasing a new vehicle versus a customer that's purchasing a pre-owned vehicle. So what we tend to see with customers that are purchasing new vehicles is that their journey takes a lot longer. So first and foremost, I think it's critical for everybody to understand that customers are spending more and more time during their critical decision-making phase online. So in 2015, we saw stats in South Africa, by the way, that showed us that on average, customers visit 6 websites and visit 6 dealerships. When they did that research 4 years later, the dimensions had changed radically. So now customers were visiting on average 14 websites and only going into 2 dealerships. So there's no doubt that customers are spending a lot of their time rather finding out information online. And as that slide shows there, The sites that they visit are quite interesting as well. So 80% of the visits that they make are to third-party websites. Now, those third-party websites include sites like cars.co.za and Autotrader, but a lot of customers also report that they're going to YouTube to watch driver reviews, and they go to online magazines and the like. So it's critical that as a dealership or as a group, for example, that your digital marketing is aimed at those kind of websites so that when people are doing searches, your results come up early as well.
I want to jump in there quickly, Pete. Sorry. This is exactly what I discussed last week with my guest Michael Cirillo as well. Is that the buying process for customers still stay the same, but the way that it's happening has changed. So instead of going into the dealership, creating that first good impression with your customer and building rapport and getting a relationship going before the customer will eventually buy from you, that's now all happening online. And that's what I'm trying to preach here to a lot of the guys, is that you need to get that online presence to have a good first impression, to build a relationship with the customer, to be able to make them see that you guys are human and that there's a relationship to be built, etc., before.
I mean, that's absolutely
take us back to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, just on that topic, and I think the next couple of slides, which we get to, we'll discuss this in more detail. But traditionally in the motor industry, we've measured a first moment of truth and a second moment of truth. So the first moment of truth being your first impression, your first interaction that you have with a customer. And the second moment of truth is the customer's experience of your product. Nowadays, we measure a zero moment of truth. And the zero moment of truth is a tough one, because this is where the customer makes their opinion of you and your brand and your product based on what their experiences are online. So this zero moment of truth is again, if we'll tackle in further slides, but it's a huge part of the influencing that takes place with a customer, and helping them understand what decision they're going to make. So
let's get back to the slide. Let's get back to that slide quickly. I want to carry on to the second point. The customer submits the inquiry. So the customer's journey online started with visiting the 14 websites and eventually going to the 2 dealerships. We know where he's been and what he's been looking for. But now the customer has submitted his inquiry. What happens next, Pete?
All right, so this is where things get very critical, and I think where a lot of internet leads get lost in the abyss because we're just not following up with our customers properly. So reaction time is everything. So we've got to get the customer literally with their mouse still in their hand, as we call it. That's how quick you've got to react back to a customer. The reason for that is customers are submitting more than one submission, so you've got to get in there before your competitor gets in there. The second thing is that if you wait any longer than 30 minutes, the damage is devastating. So you'll see there that your ability to qualify a customer decreases by a factor of 240%. And for those of you that have waited that long, you'll have experienced this, where you find a customer and then they'll say to you, "Oh, I'm busy in a meeting at the moment, I can't talk, can I phone you back?" So there's your qualification down the drain. And then if you wait longer than 2 hours, your ability to contact a customer drops massively by 1,000%. And again, a lot of sales execs will have experienced this, and we certainly get feedback from them where they say, "I just can't get hold of the customer." And the reason for that is because 10 other dealers have already found that customer, and they're now tired of receiving all these calls. So reaction time is absolutely critical.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on to the interactions with the customer, between the customer and the sales executive. This is very interesting. It takes up to an average of 12 interactions for the customer to buy into the process.
Yes, and I think this is another area where particularly on new car sales, where the journey for the customer starts quite early online. So we measure a delay between submission and purchasing of on average 60 days, believe it or not. So, when the sales exec first phones the customer appears not to be that interested. But actually, they just need a lot of nurturing, and they need a lot of information, and they need it timeously. So it takes about 12 interactions for the customer to buy into the process. And I think we'll show you some stats a little bit later. In fact, if we go to slide 5, I can quickly jump into those stats.
Before we get there, sorry, Fritz, the director, I've just messed up your show. Getting back to the interactions with the customer, the 12 interactions, are we looking at different ways of interacting with the customer? Are the customers open and accepting WhatsApp and video calls and emails, or is it just telephone calls? Where's the hotspot? What do we need to use to interact with the customers at the moment?
All right, so this is very important as well. If you phone a customer, unless you can guarantee that you're the first person to phone the customer, if you phone the customer, you're making a mistake, because ultimately you've reduced yourself to a telemarketer. And I don't have to tell you what your last experience was of a telemarketer. It was probably click, or you played a practical joke on them. So it's critical not to phone the customer first. You need to send them something electronic first. You've got to send that to them quickly, and you've still got to phone them within that half an hour. But your first point of contact should never be a telephone call. When you get to phoning the customer, you've bought yourself tacit permission to phone the customer if you've already sent them something electronic. And it's very useful to send them, for example, a screen dump of the advert that they're responding to, because when you do phone that customer, it's astounding to find out just how many of them forget where they've actually submitted. So when you initially phone them, they're very confused. So send them a screen dump of the advert that they're responding to, and then when you phone them, you've got an excuse to introduce yourself and say, "Hey, thank you so much for your submission on that white vehicle that I attached in the email that I sent you." And the other critical thing is never try and sell on the first call. If you do that, you've become too transactional, and once again, from a psychological point of view, you're going to switch the customer off. So don't be tempted to try and sell. You've got to rather do information gathering with the customer and then get transactional on other interactions. Now, again, those interactions can be based on a phone call, on an email or WhatsApp, you name it. But it's 12 interactions in total.
Awesome. Pete, if we summarize this first slide, obviously most important, the speed of your interaction with the customer, the information, the convenience, and the choice.
Yeah, so if we look at a modern customer and the research on what they actually want, those are the 4 big tick boxes that you need to have. So speed, get back to them quickly. Information, obviously don't just send them information on one particular model. So send them information that's useful to them. So video links, pictures, pricing, and the pricing is important as well. Don't give them the retail price. They can get that off the OEM's websites. Give them your price.
Correct.
Convenience, make it convenient for them. As we've said, 80% of their website visits are to third-party sites, to save them the trouble by providing all the information that those third-party sites traditionally give. And then lastly, choice. It's a basic scientific marketing principle that you give 3 choices, and you can use that now to create a price anchor as well, which is very, very important.
Okay, awesome. Pete, I've got a question here quickly. It's actually from my wife, believe it or not. She says, surely social distancing is also going to contribute to the customer's online search in the future. So we spoke about this last week with Michael as well. The times that we are living in is definitely going to bump us into, even we're going to see in a year or 2 from now, we're going to see bigger, more astounding stats for online vehicle purchases, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we can maybe just qualify that, I don't think customers are going to physically buy their vehicles online. That will still remain a small percentage. But the purchase journey is certainly going to happen more online. And in fact, Fani, we've seen this happening for a while now. So the coronavirus and the pandemic that we're currently experiencing has just triggered that into more of a reality for us, whereas it's actually been creeping up on us for a while now. And that's borne out by the shift that we see in the statistics on web visits by customers while they're going through their purchase journey.
Sure. I think if we can move on to the second slide now, Pete, because this will obviously fall into what we've been speaking about so far. What happens before the customer starts his buying process? This is very interesting to me, this second slide.
Yeah, just by the interest, it ties in nicely with the way that we define prospecting. So we always split prospecting into 3 levels. A suspect who is about 12 months away from purchasing a vehicle. Then a prospect, who's somebody that's prospecting you and your product, who's about 3 months away from purchasing a vehicle. And then a lead. So if we look at this chart over here, you can see that suspects start looking early on in the equation in terms of what type of vehicle they'd perhaps like to buy in a year's time when they're ready. But you can see that the peak of the curve over there occurs 2 to 3 months before they're ready to purchase. And again, this talks to the fact that you really need to be out there on the internet as a dealership, making sure that when people are in this critical decision-making phase, that you're visible, so that you're part of their decision-making process. What's quite interesting for me on this chart, which isn't shown there, but people spend more time researching what vehicle they're going to purchase than they even do on elective surgery. So you better understand that customers are really with information before they're coming to a dealership.
I think that's a very interesting stat, Pete. 2 to 3 months before they actually start, well, before they start the process. I think, in my opinion and in my experience, the dealerships are still short-sighted with the fact that the guys start so far ahead.
Yeah, and I think that perhaps gives digital marketing a bad name, because the expectation certainly from the dealership is an instantaneous quick win. But the reality is it takes hard graft. It takes doing the hard yards in terms of marketing for your brand equity to get out there with the customers that are on that journey. So I think the lesson to be learned from here is, if you're expecting an instant result, if you're expecting a genuinely hot lead to come in from the internet, you're going to be disappointed. But that mustn't be the excuse not to do digital marketing, because if you don't, well, we've seen from the stats that you're just simply not going to be part of the customer's picture when it comes to making a decision.
Yeah. We've got another question that's come in from Gideon Duplessis. He says, how corona sensitive do you think customers are going to be post the lockdown?
Yeah, I've done a lot of reading on this, Fani, just to try and gather what the general feeling is out there. And I think we've got to look at it from 2 sides. The first is, clearly there is going to be a heightened sensitivity to social distancing in the beginning. But I think that past pandemics have taught us that wanes. So, I think that initially we're going to have to gear ourselves up for people doing more online type of transactions, and that certainly I think what Corona has done for us is made it far more acceptable for us to contact customers via the web and have a discussion like we're having now, versus coming into the dealership. So it remains to be seen what the long-term effects are going to be. But I think for the next 3 to 4 years, we can expect that most of the discussions are going to take place online.
Okay, cool, man. Let's move on to the next slide that we have prepared here, Peter. This blows my mind and highlights the importance of your online presence. 7 of the top 8 influences occur online when buying a vehicle.
Yeah, it's crazy, Fani. The Afrikaners have a good saying that says papier is geduldig. And I don't know if that's party to people believing what they read online, and that's why they influence so heavily by what they read online. But that's the fact. What Google showed us in this research was that the online presence of a dealership, the influence that it has on a customer is exactly the same as if the customer was sitting in front of a good sales executive.
Yeah. So the only the one of the 8 influencers online is when they talk to their friends and their family about the automotives. The rest, everything online.
Absolutely. So, and I think this is a good lesson for dealerships, again, to understand in terms of how to develop their online marketing strategy. Because I think we're very guilty at this stage of still being shotgun in our approach and not really understanding what it is that a customer's wanting out of information online. So there's a great opportunity for dealerships to go and have a look at that slide and see what it is that a customer is actually researching and then package their marketing around that.
Correct. Very important thing that we spoke about last week in the episode was to clearly define your objective when marketing and making sure that you're getting that result. All right, Pete, the next slide, opportunity for sales growth online. Where do you see the opportunity for sales growth online?
Well, I think, first of all, the first and immediate opportunity that dealerships have got is simply to up their closing rates on their internet submissions. So what we measure in South Africa is on average less than 1% closing rate on internet leads, which means there's an awful lot of money being spent by businesses on digital marketing that yields leads, but those leads are lost because of the factors that we've spoken about earlier. So if we look at showroom leads, for example, good dealers will close between 10 and 12.5% of their showroom leads, but the internet lead closing rate is very, very low. So that zone of opportunity is something that the dealers can apply and get immediate results from. But it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of strategy, and it takes a lot of understanding of how to process an internet lead.
Awesome. Peter, I've got a question here from Alfred Ryder. He says, we have so much to catch up on. Once we are all online selling savvy and integrated this on the dealer level, when do you think the sales will start to normalize?
That's a great question. And I think that I did an article or an email to my staff where I actually looked at what happened after previous pandemics to the economy. So whether it was the Asian flu of 1957 or indeed the Spanish flu of 1918, we saw massive crashes in the economy. And so everybody looked through their lenses at that point of it's all doom and gloom. But I got to tell you that the news is good. The economies after both of those pandemics reacted very quickly and recovered very quickly after that. So I think some of the challenges that are facing dealerships actually are going to be things like used car vehicles are going to become high demand. So don't be tempted to go out and discount like crazy when the market opens up again, because I can assure you used car vehicles are going to be in premium demand. And the reality of that is, the reason for that is because new car stock is going to be a shortage. Production has been halted in Europe and other territories for a while now, so there's going to be a bit of a backlog. So even on new cars, the stock that you've got is going to be gold. I think new car sales might be affected purely out of the fact that there's a shortage of stock. But if you can start stocking up now on pre-owned vehicles or used vehicles, that's where you're going to start seeing an acceleration in your growth. I think from an after-sales point of view, for those that are on the after-sales side of things, the workshops are going to have a massive backlog. So customers that should have and wanted to service their vehicles during this lockdown can't, and that's going to be a big challenge for the dealerships to make up that backlog. I think one of the things that dealerships should be doing, if they can now, is stocking up on parts, because they've got to be able to match the demand with parts that's going to be seen in the workshops. But I'm not pessimistic.
I assume that's going to be a problem. Part supply is going to be the same issue as with stock supply on new vehicles. Part supply, there's going to be back orders and backlogs and whatever the case is, which is just going to snowball the after-sales departments as well.
100%. And I think that what dealerships should be doing both on a new car side and on a workshop side is starting to develop communication strategy to their customers, so that customers are made aware of what some of the challenges are that they're facing, rather than wait for the customer to come in and be upset because there's no stock.
Sure. Can we get back to that slide quickly? Because I've got a question with regards to closing ratio when it comes to online versus walk-in customers. So if we can get that slide back up there. If we look at the closing ratio, if I'm reading this correctly, closing ratio on internet leads at about 2.5% and walk-in customers at about 12.5%. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the benchmark dealers will close 2.5%, but on average, we're actually closing less than 1% nationally. And on workshops, it's nearly 6 times the closing rate. What we've seen with some of the success that we've had with our sales concierge that we host, for example, for Volvo Cars South Africa, is those closing rates, depending on the marketing channel, we can get as high as 8%. So a massive difference just from applying a proper scientific process to the sales concierge or the call center.
Don't you think that measuring when it comes to that statistic is still a bit of a problem? Because we know that the customer is spending a hell of a lot of time online researching the car, but can we really measure where the lead came from, where he did his online searching and he was convinced and he decided to buy the vehicle, but walked into the dealership and we now think this is a walk-in customer that bought the vehicle?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's one of the things that we try and measure. And I think it talks to the fact that when a customer comes in to a dealership, or whether you talk to them over a telephone, you need to ask some pertinent questions to assist you with your marketing. So one of the things that we do is we ask the customer what their online journey was. Where did they first see an advert? What triggered them to get interested in the particular vehicle? And then finally, what was the platform that they made their submission on, so that we can actually draw a dotted line from when they first saw an advert through to when they physically put in a submission. And it's no different for a customer who then translates from that submission phase into a walk-in. So when a walk-in comes in, you should be asking them, where did you hear about us? What deal were you looking at, etc., etc. But
there's still a lot of work to be done, yeah.
Oh, big time, absolutely.
This, I think, is one of the biggest lack in the dealership is measuring this specific topic that we're talking about now.
For sure. At best, it's guesswork. At worst, it just simply doesn't get done. And I think it means that the actual effectiveness of the marketing that dealerships are doing is not noted, and so further poor marketing decisions are then made based on incorrect assumptions.
All right, Peter, let's move on to the next slide that we've got prepared. And I think this one, I've seen this one before, and I'm sure that you are going to elaborate a little bit on this. But this blows your mind. The hard facts about what the sales executives are doing.
Yeah, I joke about this, but it is quite serious. If these statistics didn't exist, I wouldn't necessarily have a business.
Correct.
But it is very sad. I can even start off these statistics by saying to you that 80% of sales execs don't make a call in the first place. So the 48% of the sales execs that do make a call give up after the first call. Now, I don't want to be too critical of the sales executives. I think it's a question of understanding why, when they phone that customer, the customer doesn't seem as hot as they would have imagined. I think if sales execs understood the concept that this is a long-term relationship, that they're just starting with the customer, that maybe they would invest more time and effort in terms of nurturing that customer and keeping in contact with that customer for longer. I mean, just to give you an example, Fani, we track leads that have come in where it's taken over 12 months for the sale to occur. So, it's been over a 12-month period that we've engaged those customers to the final conclusion of them eventually buying.
We're gonna discuss that in the next slide, but let's carry on with this one. Before we get there, I just wanna mention we've got some awesome questions coming in for us, Peter. Barcy and Francois van Eden wants us to talk about fleet. So I think you and I need to discuss. We both have a bit of fleet background, so let's put a fleet discussion together for them. We'll definitely do that for you, Barcy Steyn and Francois van Eden. And then Francois got another question here. He says, how effective is email marketing to a good, clean database? I think that's where the emphasis needs to come in. Theory is that you mail at least 5 times before you pick up a phone or take it further.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Francois touched on 2 important things. The first is it's got to be a clean database. When we analyze our customer databases, we find that more than 50% of the names on their database have incorrect contact details. And that's not because they were inputted incorrectly in the beginning. It's just simply because the data is so old that customers have changed their email addresses and telephone numbers in that time. So there are opportunities to clean up that data. In terms of email, it's an interesting question because it also depends heavily on the demographic that you're talking to and also the generation that you're talking to. So, us old fogies, as my daughters call me now, we still work well on email, but the younger people out there work well on WhatsApp. So we try and have a bit of a blend of the two. Or in fact, even other sources. But now let's go back to the email. What's critical with the email is that you need to know how to develop what's called an HTML coded email. And this is an email that contains a whole lot of media and photographs and everything that the customer needs to have at their fingertips. An HTML email also...
I'm going to jump in there, Peter. We're going to get to the emails right at the end. Am I correct? Okay, so I'm going to jump in there. Let's get back to the hard facts. 25% of more give up after the second call.
Yeah, so those sales execs have had a bit more persistence, but again, on that second call, they seem to feel that the customer's not hot. And I think again, given the fact that we operate in a bit of a racehorse mentality with sales, we start each month on 0, and at the beginning of the month the gates open and we shoot off and start doing sales. So I suppose it's human nature that if you get the feeling from a customer when you're speaking to them that they're not that interested, you're going to put them to one side and rather deal with what appear to be hotter leads. So those statistics just get worse and worse as we move along.
Yes. Let's get to the last point.
Yeah, I mean, only 10% of sales execs persist after the 4th call. And I think that the correlation is clear that 10% of sales executives do 80% of the business. They're the ones that don't give up. Correct.
All right, Peter, in your experience, how long is the typical online sales cycle? And this stat, the first time I met you, you showed me all the stats from your call center. And this is one that absolutely boggled my brain and has had me thinking since the first time we spoke about this. Show us that slide there, Fritz, if you don't mind. Run us through this cycle online.
All right. So obviously, not all customers are going to take an average of 60 days to make their purchase decision. So what we see is that 43.5% of customers will purchase in that month. Nearly 26% will purchase between 30 and 60 days post-submission. And then if we count those last 3 together, we get over 30% of sales occur on leads that are 60 days and older. And again, when we looked at that zone of opportunity on one of the previous slides, and the difference between the closing rate of internet leads versus the showroom leads, this is where you can really start closing that gap. Because 30% of your customers are purchasing vehicles after 60 days of submission. And there's no ways, with respect and love in my heart, that any of the sales execs out there are maintaining contact with those customers for longer than 60 days.
Guys, this is a very interesting topic for you guys at home. Please, if you want to jump in here, if you want to ask a question, if you want to leave a comment, please comment below. Peter and myself will see the comments and will answer. Peter, that just takes us back to exactly what we spoke about earlier. Persistence here is key. And I think, you know, the CRM systems that the dealership have to the, what's the right word that I'm looking for, to use, you know, for the salespeople to use as a proper setup and system for the guys to contact, create a future contact and speak to the customer within that 60 days after that first contact was made.
Yeah, I mean, every one of the CRM systems has a calendar that's part of it, and you can set reminders for yourself. There really should be no excuse. Even if you don't have a CRM system, you can use your Outlook calendar. So there's many ways
Correct.
that you can set reminders for yourself. And, you know, your customers genuinely appreciate it. If you obviously don't want to overphone a customer, so you've got to feel out with your customer what the expected time frame that they're going to be purchasing a vehicle is. If they tell you they're going to buy in 6 months' time, then say, no problem, I'm going to catch up with you in 3 months' time. But you've got to make that follow-up call, no matter whatever the period is.
Correct. Just stay top of mind and build that relationship. I've always said to sales executives and people that I've worked with in my teams that you just build that relationship and phone the guy and talk about the rugby game. Stay on top of mind, and whenever the time is right, the customer will come back to you because he's got a relationship with you.
I mean, never a true word has been spoken. And in fact, the doyen of sales, Zig Ziglar, the late great Zig Ziglar, very famously said once that it's not our job as sales executives to sell to a customer now, but it is certainly our job to be in front of the customer when they are ready to purchase. And I think the mistake that we make, particularly with online leads, is we too transactional too quickly, and that is a big turnoff for the customer. They want you to develop a relationship with them, and the reality is that they're not going to necessarily buy from you now. So you need to invest in that relationship. But you know that at least you're building a pipeline of business that can last you up to a year.
Yes. Okay, so Wallace Goosen is online. Thanks, Wallace, for joining us. He says, okay, so we've identified the zone of opportunity, but how do we close those customers? And I think it sort of ties in with what we've discussed now. You know, the customers, I think we in too much of a hurry in the dealership because it's, you know, target driven and pressure's on and we want to sell the customer now. But I think the fact that the customer's buying cycle is probably over the 60 days, or a lot of them are over the 60 days, we need to keep on working on the customers. And this is something that I thought about after speaking to you quite a bit, is that if sales executives and sales managers realize this and have a proper system in place, that they will actually start every next month with a hell of a nice pipeline to work on.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, Wally, how are you doing? It's been a long time since I last saw you, so it's great to see you watching us this evening. But you know, it's a great question. I think it's not easily answered in that to close customers that have submitted online, we need to start the quality of the process right from the beginning. In other words, we've got to get back to our customers instantaneously. We've got to provide them with the 4 things that they want, which is speed, information, convenience, and choice. And then we've got to really, really understand that we've got to invest time and effort in nurturing that customer. You know, one of the things that you might want to think about from a dealership perspective, particularly from a sales management point of view, is that if you're having your daily sales meeting, instead of just asking the sales executives what they've currently got on the boil, maybe ask them how many customers are they going to be following up on that submitted leads a month or 2 months or 3 months ago. That would be an interesting statistic for the sales managers to start tracking.
I agree. All right, let's move on, Peter. We've got sales cycle. Oh, sorry, I've got a comment here from Janus Jansen van Rensburg. Hello, Janus. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time. He says it's a great topic. If I was in sales, Johannes is in after sales. He's laughing about us talking about sales. One of our biggest issues in both sales and after sales are the lack of ownership and pride by most individuals. There are some stars, but in general, very bad. I tend to agree with him. There's a bit of and this lends to that stigma with the sales, vehicle sales executives.
Yeah, I mean, I often make the statement that there's a big difference between order taking and sales craft. And the latter requires a high level of dedication and professionalism. There's no doubt about it. But therein lies the opportunity for sales executives, because you can really stand out from the crowd by making sure that you are that professional. And you're gonna ramp up sales like you never knew possible.
Okay, Peter, let's move on to the next. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's perhaps something to note that the topic we're having now is every bit as relevant to after sales. And I think that after sales departments don't do enough marketing. They certainly don't do enough online marketing, and they don't have capacity, even if they did do that, to be able to handle the kind of leads and queries and questions that they would get from that online marketing. So I have absolutely no doubt that this is just as relevant to after sales as it is to sales.
Cool. Moving on to the next slide. Very interesting. And I think this is something that I also want to preach on and harp on a little bit. Sales cycle and closing rates via channel. Closing rates on third-party websites, let's call it social media, which is Facebook or the website. What's your take on this?
Okay, so that's just the absolute data. So if we take, for example, Facebook at 2.5% on average closing rates, it doesn't look very flattering. But when we analyze the customer's journey, what we do find is that a lot of the leads were prompted by Facebook. But the customers then exited Facebook and then went on to Google. And it's quite an interesting statistic. So 80% of customers who see an advert on Facebook, even if that Facebook advert's got a submission button, somehow they've got trust issues with Facebook. So they exit Facebook, go onto Google, and then that advert, if you've done your algorithms correctly and you've done your remarketing algorithm correctly, your advert will then pop up on Google. And then they seem to go from there into the website. So the absolute number might not be flattering, but Facebook still plays an enormous role in getting customers to submit.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've said lately is that I think social media should again try and be social, and that's where the relationship gets built, and that's where the trust gets built, and the information gets shared. But I think, in my opinion, I think we need to start moving away from trying to go in for the kill on social media. And that's why we're seeing the stats that we are seeing.
Well, another thing that if you look at some of the experts in terms of what they say about how to structure your Facebook page, for example, 70% of your content should be interesting stuff. 30% should be model related, and 10% should be about us. Celebrating the people that work for you, who's joined you, who's celebrating an anniversary, who's had a baby, who's had a promotion, all those kind of things. Excuse me. So the fact is that most of the stuff that you have on Facebook should be interesting.
All right, Peter, we spoke about this, started to touch on this. Let's wrap the show up with your suggested email structure, the way that you would structure this.
Yes, and I think this talks to what Francois was asking about in terms of email.
Correct.
So if you're going to send out an email, I'm a big fan of that. Just understand that you're not going to get a reaction back from the email. The email gives you permission to phone the customer, if that makes sense. So don't think that by sending out hundreds and hundreds of emails that you're suddenly going to have this influx of leads. It's not going to happen. But you're going to get permission then, and you're going to have something that you can talk to a customer when you phone them. So if we go back to that email, it's critical that the email is professional and polished. So I've just used an example over there. Obviously, some pictures, So that's going to be the headline that the customer first sees. And if we go to the second slide where it looks at the video content. Oh, sorry, that's the information part. So there you put in a little bit of an introduction about who you are, or perhaps an introduction on the model. And critical to have the information available to you. So, you know, we've put down the prices of 3 different models, for example, and that talks to choice. And critically on those prices is that we've given our price. So not just the retail price. Customers want to know what your value proposition is, so make sure that you show them. This is not a quote. This is just an indication of the type of deal that you could perhaps do with the customer. And then the last slide with that email talks to the interesting content that you put on. So here you can stick, and this is going to be critical for what we're currently going through under lockdown, where we can provide fantastic information to our customers. So the first is I normally stick an advert on. The second video is a walk around. Obviously your customers can't come into the dealership, so they're going to need to get as much information as possible through the walk around. Always stick on accessory videos because it just shows the flexibility of the packages that are on offer. And underneath that, you can stick on your vehicle configurator. So the customer can click directly from your email onto the model's vehicle configurator and start experimenting with the vehicle as well. And last but not least, always put on some interesting brand videos. The more exciting type of video that you can find, stick that on. Now, the beauty with this is that all that information is available to anyone, because every single brand has its own global media sites, and all those videos and photographs and everything is available on there. And if you want more specific videos, then you can go to whatever manufacturer you work for. You can go to their YouTube channel as well and get some of those videos. Lots of information.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time tonight, Peter. I think we've started to touch on quite a bit, and we'll definitely have you back for some more episodes. I think, you know, we've got a lot of endless topics to talk about. I've got a couple of comments that I want to, or questions and comments that I want to go through before we end the show. Janus Janssen van Rensburg said something, said people do business with people, not an entity, build lasting relationships. And that's always been true and will never change. You know, depending on, doesn't matter what era we move into or online, that facts will always still remain.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that we always recommend is that when you're corresponding with customers that have submitted online via email, for example, always have your photograph as part of your signature, because the customer certainly wants to see who they're dealing with. So take nothing away from the personal interaction. I think that what online does for us is just provide us with fantastic technology where we can share so much more information instantly with our customers. But we absolutely need to have that personal touch.
I've got another question here from Francois van Eden. It says, how important is the subject line of the email? What are the pointers for a good action-orientated subject line? Very good question, Francois.
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, the subject line is really important for a number of reasons. The first is you want the subject to be a hook that interests customers, but you've got to be careful that that hook doesn't attract a spam filter on the receiving end. There is actually a website that you can go to check your subject line content, and it'll tell you if that is going to typically get caught up in a spam filter. So never put things like special offer. That's a red flag to a spam filter. You know, anything that has any connotation to sales or anything like that. So be very careful about the subject line that you use. But as I said, you can look up, I can't remember the name offhand, but if you just search in Google for how to check my subject heading, there's websites out there that'll check it for you.
Awesome. Peter, thank you so much, man. I think we had an awesome show. Thank you very much for everybody that joined us online. I see Trevor Taylor just joined us. Trevor, This video will be available for you to watch after the show. Barcy Steyn, Hani Gerber, Annemie Kirsten, there's so many, David Zeli, all the guys, Gideon Duplessis. Thanks, guys, for joining us. It was an awesome show. Thanks for all the comments and interaction. This is what makes this medium so awesome. We can absolutely interact with the customers or the viewers out there. It was absolutely awesome. What I'll do, Peter, is I'll put your links to your Facebook page and to your website in the comments below. If you don't mind, maybe if we can get something like that subject tracker link, we'll put it in there. We'll put all that stuff down in the comments below, guys, and you can take it from there. From my side, FS Media side, if there's anything that I can help you with online marketing, with content marketing, Facebook, social media, all that sort of stuff, please don't hesitate to contact me. If you haven't liked the page already, please like the page and share with all of your like-minded industry friends. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Have you got any last words?
Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be able to sit and discuss these kind of topics. I think they're very relevant. And I'd like to also extend my offer to anybody that wants assistance during this lockdown period. I'm here, I'm available. We're giving out lots of free advice. So take the opportunity to get a hold of us and let's see where we can assist.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete Wallace. Thanks for your comments. It was a great show. Johannes, great show. David Zeli, Dankie Yellow, well done. Danielle Theron, is it Theron like Charlie's? Or is it Theron like South African Theron? Thanks, guys, for the show. Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week, 6 o'clock Thursday, where we'll be discussing some more relevant automotive topics. Have a great evening, guys. Cheers. Bye. Cheers, Pete.
Cheers, Fonny. Cheers, everyone.